Jonathan Frakes pulls off the Riker maneuver this season, and I'm like, he goes up a half a point in my book.
I think that's the truth.
Hi guys, Geecher64 here. Today we're talking about Picard Season 3, Episode 1. That's right, we're talking Star Trek again, and let's hope this season is the one that can finally save New Trek. I do not like Picard Season 1, do not like Picard Season 2. I do not like Star Trek Discovery. The live-action shows for Star Trek, Strange New Worlds was a step in the right direction, but still not there in my opinion. So let's see if Star Trek Season 3 can bring it all back. I have some hope. Terry Matalas, the new showrunner, I think we have reason to be cautiously optimistic, okay?
Itty bitty smile. Just let the mouth curl a little then.
For those new to my channel, for those who did not see my Picard reviews or my Orville reviews, which I had a lot of fun reviewing the Orville, the way that I do my reviews is I kind of go through the entire plot of the episode, kind of break down each plot point and talk about it as I go through and review it, and just kind of have some fun with the review. A little bit different than I think some other people tend to review it, and that's part of the reason why my reviews always comes up the next day on Friday. So if you are interested in this and you like this kind of way of reviewing it, please subscribe. I'll be reviewing every episode of Picard through episode 10, and those reviews will be coming out on Fridays. But how was Picard Season 3, Episode 1? Well, it was a pretty good first episode, I think. I think we got some good setup for some potential going forward, right? I know that a lot of people are like, well, this is a season with the nostalgia to try and bait in old fans, and I get that as an argument. That really doesn't have any reasoning for why I'm interested in this season or why I'm cautiously optimistic for this season. I'm cautiously optimistic for this season because of Terry Matalas, the new showrunner, is given free creative reign to kind of do what he wanted with this season. And the initial reports for it are pretty good. There are several people on YouTube that have gotten the full seasons, the full season. Some people have gotten the first 6 episodes, and people who are critical of New Trek in particular have said that this season is good. So that gives me hope for it. I have not seen the advanced episodes. I'm watching it just like everybody else week to week. So that's how I'm going to be reviewing it. Hopefully this is the season that unites people who like New Trek, because there are some people who like it, and what would you, OG Star Trek fans? I don't know really what to claim it. Star Trek fans who don't like New Trek and fans who like New Trek can unite around this season. That's what the hope is, I guess.
Just a fool's hope.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into the review. We open up with a Federation ship in a space near a nebula. There's some classical music playing, which is pretty nice. We get a pan inside the ship, and the ship is clearly in bad shape. It's either been under attack or survived an attack or something, but it is by itself. Panning through the ship, we see Picard's captain's log playing from the TNG episode Best of Both Worlds. This is from when the Borg invaded Sector 001 on their way to Earth, and how they hid in a dust cloud. Really good episode. Obviously, Best of Both Worlds is one of the top tier TNG episodes, both parts. But with them talking about the dust cloud and the nebula outside, you're like, hey, maybe they're hiding from something. Maybe this is a hint onto what's going on here. What happened to the ship? Then we see a case with the name Lieutenant Commander Jack Crusher on it, so now we know whose ship this probably is. It is probably Dr. Crusher's ship, and that's exactly who it is. This is Beverly's ship, the Ilios, and it's being boarded by some pirates, something not good dudes. We know that part, and she does lock somebody in a room. We don't know who this person is, but somebody else is on the ship with her, and she locks him in a room to keep him out of the fight, obviously. And she goes and confronts the pirates, the boarding party. And the rifle that she's using to fight these guys is obviously not Starfleet issue. This is obviously a bootleg rifle. The power cells are depleted very fast. Apparently you have to cock it or pump it in order to get a charge in the power cells to take a shot. So clearly not Federation issue, which I thought was kind of interesting. And she does get in a firefight, as I said, with these two, and she does get wounded, but she does take out the boarding party. She even takes out one of them, hits one of them in the knee or in the leg, and the guy goes down, and she just over him and just uncharacteristically takes him out. So obviously She is very familiar with whoever these people are, and they're not good dudes, and they obviously did something to her, or she's had really bad experiences in the past, and that she's willing to just take, I'm not going to help this person or this thing or whatever this is. I'm just going to take it out. What's interesting is the rifle that she's using actually does get mentioned later, and I'm going to get back to that here in a second. But that all leads into the title drop in the classic TNG font, which was nice. And the name of this episode is Next Generation. And I would say this is a little bit presumptuous. If this was anybody else, any other creative head using the title The Next Generation, I'd say this is a bit presumptuous to try and use that name out there. But based on the way this episode kind of plays out, I don't know. Maybe it's worth using that name. Then we cut to Laris and Picard, and Laris was a character that was introduced in season 1 and season 2. You don't need to see either of those seasons. One of the good things about this episode, and I think what this season's probably going to go for, is you really don't need to see season 1 and season 2. I think they're going to try and bypass as much of that as possible. I'm pretty sure that's what Terry's approach to this is. And, but Lars is probably one of the better new characters. It is strange to see a Romulan with a Scottish accent. Like, is there a Scotland in Romulus somewhere? Is the universal translator, can it just attach accents to people? Like, was that a chosen accent? I don't know. This is kind of the weird things the Star Trek fans think about. At least that's what I think about.
We get it! You're from space Australia!
Either way, Laris is in a new relationship with Picard in this, and Picard's packing away some things. Apparently, he's going to go with Laris to Romulus. He has this really cool Enterprise D painting. I'd love to have this Enterprise D painting. I think that'd be really cool. And he's instead of packing away, he wants to give it to Geordi, who is now running a fleet museum, at least according to what Picard says. Laris and Picard talk about the past and how it matters, and we see Picard's flute, and a lot of people are going to say that it's fan service. I already know. Here's the thing with fan service. Fan service is neither good nor bad. It is an innocuous thing. It can be used with the fan in mind, in that it actually boosts the story that they're telling and the character building that they're going for within the season. Or it can just be member berries. It can just be stuff that's thrown in there to appease fans and distract them from subpar writing. And that's kind of how it's been used. I'd say that's really how it's been used with New Trek, particularly in Picard Season 2. They reference Sarek and Gul Dukat and stuff like that. And people are like, oh, these are just cool Easter eggs. But if they don't mean anything, if they don't tie in anything, that's really what makes the fan service work. I think in this case, he's shown the flute, a very important piece of Picard's life. One of the best episodes of TNG is when he gets the flute. It ties in directly what they're talking about, so it definitely works. I don't think this is like pandering fan service. I think this is fan service for the story. Picard does say he's a man who does not need a legacy and he wants a new adventure. And I said something like this in my Star Trek video. The very first Star Trek video I ever did on this channel was when Patrick Stewart said he was coming back as Picard in a TV show. We were going to get a Picard TV show, and I was still hopeful at this point. I think I had just seen Discovery, maybe the first season, and I really didn't like it. And I was like, well, hey, Patrick Stewart's coming back. We're getting Picard. We're getting TNG era stuff, and obviously that's not what we got. But regardless, that first video, I was throwing out some ideas for what a Picard-centric story could be, and one of those was that he would join an archaeology crew and go off and that's how he would spend his retirement. That was one of his hobbies. He really was interested in archaeology. And that seemed like a cool way that he might spend his retirement, because he doesn't really seem like the person to just kind of sit around on a rocking chair. So I just thought that would have been cool. And so I do think it's nice that he's like, hey, I'm ready for a new adventure. I need to get moving. I don't want to just sit here. Then we hear a familiar chirping from an old Starfleet communicator. And this leads Picard to a trunk and his old uniform from the Next Generation. And his comm badge apparently is chirping out, there's a codec that's being sent to it, and the passcode is Myriad, which is something Picard remembers from his time on the Enterprise. And he decodes it, and it's Beverly Crusher, and there's a video, and she says, Hellbird, no Starfleet involvement, and don't trust anyone. We do find out that Picard hasn't talked to Beverly in 20 years, and Lars has a conversation with him, and apparently Beverly and Jean-Luc did have tried to have a relationship at some point over 20 years ago. So it would have been after the events of Nemesis, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. And, Lars basically just serves the purpose of showing where Picard is now, kind of the extra shove to get him to go and figure out what's happening with Beverly. So based on this, I would say Lars is probably, we're not going to see her until the end of the season. I think this will be the only thing we see of her, and we probably won't see her till the end. Then we cut to 10 forward. This is the bar that's on Earth. They showed this in the last season. I think the whole idea of 10 forward being a street name that's a bar that's been around since the 90s or whatever, it's so dumb.
This is idiotic.
I think it's a dumb idea, but regardless, they go to 10 forward. Guinan's not here. You got some other bartender. But one thing I thought was interesting was they used Eagle Moss models, which some Star Trek fans may recognize the name Eagle Moss. They've done a bunch of ship models, that they've put out. They're pre-built models, or I don't know what would you call them. I would call them models. You don't have to build them. Anyway, I've got a few on my shelf back here. They are really cool. That's what my Deep Space Nine is right back there over my shoulder, is an Eagle Moss. So I thought it was cool to actually use the Eagle Moss models in the bar. But it also serves to introduce to a few different things. One is Frontier Day, which obviously plays into this episode and the plot going forward. But also a really interesting line where, Riker asks, how come there's so many Enterprise Ds? And the bartender says, oh, the fat ones? No one wants those. And so Riker turns to Picard and he says, hear that, Jean-Luc? No one wants the fat ones. And I felt personally attacked. I was personally attacked by this.
I know when I've been insulted. I know when I've been insulted.
And I just love how Riker just screams over the bar, that's Galaxy class to you, young lady. And really, this really sets up one of the highlights of this episode, and that is Jonathan Frakes as Riker. I think he does a great job as Riker. This feels like Riker. I really love it. He's the MVP of this episode, and I'll mention him again. But Picard actually calls Riker to help him on this thing. That's what should have happened in season 1, but it didn't because... I won't get into that. But Riker's apparently having some family issues with Troy. Obviously, he's married to Troy now. He has a daughter named Kestra, who we saw in Picard season 1, and his son, who died from a virus. So obviously, that's put some extra strain. I guess that's what the premise is here on their relationship. So Riker's kind of off doing his thing on his own right now. And Picard gives him a rundown of Beverly's message, and Hellbird, which is the name that Beverly threw out there, was apparently the name of a computer virus that when the Borg invaded Sector 001, it scrambled the comms and added a 3 to every digit in the computer, obviously jacking up their systems. And so adding the 3 to the digits that were the coordinates that Beverly sent gave the exact coordinates of where she was. So I thought that was a kind of a neat little thing. And it also harkened back to the whole captain's log and why the captain's log was playing earlier, because that's what he was talking about the episode, best of both worlds from the Borg invasion of Sector 001. And we find out not only did Crusher cut communications with Picard, also she cut communications with the entire crew 20 years ago. And we see someone who is spying on Riker and Picard's conversation here in the bar, and the guy drops like this little Enterprise D into like a glass of whiskey or something. And I was just thinking, man, I would totally love to buy some whiskey stones that were in the shape of the Enterprise D so I could throw them in my whiskey. That would be so cool.
Merchandising!
I can't believe Terry Matalas named the entire system after himself, the Matalas system. When that showed up, I was kind of cracking up. I chuckled. I was like, really? Oh, that's pretty presumptuous of you. But it kind of reminded me of, from Star Wars, the Lando system, the Matalas system. It gave me, Star Wars, Star Trek vibes. If this season is as good as a lot of people are kind of throwing out there, I'm all for naming a system after yourself. That's what I have to say, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And we get Rafi. Rafi is the worst.
The worst. She's the worst in the world.
I don't like Rafi. She was the worst character introduced in Picard season 1 and season 2, on top of multiple really bad characters. And apparently we're back with her. So we'll just see how this goes. And she's pretending to be a drug addict again so she can get information from Orion. And she gets information about she's trying to get information about an experimental quantum tunneling tech that was stolen from the Daystrom Institute. And one thing that you find out also during this is that the whole Rafi and Seven aren't together anymore. And so I think that'll be a benefit for both characters, because that was terrible. That whole idea was terrible from the jump, that was forced in there at the end of season 1, and it was terribly executed in season 2. We also hear about the Red Lady, and we see that Rafi is not actually a drug addict. She's actually working undercover as a Starfleet undercover agent. And I love this shot of the Earth space dock. It's so great. It definitely gave me Star Trek movie vibes. Captain Riker's plan is apparently to board the Titan, which is being retrofitted at space dock at this time. Just been retrofitted, and the idea is that Riker and Picard are going to go in under the guise of being an inspection team. And, this was obviously, the Titan was Riker's first command, so that kind of gives a little bit of a foot in the door there. And the Titan is a Constitution class. I know a lot of people like the Constitution class. Constitution class is cool. Don't get me wrong, but I like the Galaxy class. So, just me personally. And we find out 7 of 9 is the first officer. Apparently she's now in Starfleet. That was a terrible plot from season 2. I don't think they mentioned in season 1 as far as why she's not in Starfleet. But in season 2, she gives the reason she's not in Starfleet because Starfleet discriminated against her because she's a Borg, which I thought was so stupid. It's so dumb. 7 of 9 has proven herself with the Voyager crew for years. The idea that for some reason Starfleet wouldn't trust her because she's a Borg or discriminated against her because she's a Borg is pretty dumb, considering Starfleet is extremely open to all alien races. I never liked that, so it's nice that they kind of just okay, she's in Starfleet now, and I guess they went with time served because she's now the first officer, so she went from not in Starfleet all the way to first officer. So the only thing I can figure is time served, maybe. I have no idea what they did with this rank structure, but regardless, this is probably where she should have been from the beginning, so we'll give it a hand wave. And we're introduced to Sydney LaForge, who is on the ship. This is LaForge's daughter. Apparently her nickname at the Academy was Crash LaForge, as Riker points out, because she crashed a space shuttle possibly twice. So that's pretty interesting, and I kind of like the way that they kind of just threw her in there. She had a little bit of a highlight. I'm pretty sure we'll see some more of her. I like the idea of LaForge finally having, getting married and having some kids. I like that. I like this idea. And I really love the banter between Picard and Riker in this episode. I know I mentioned Jonathan Frakes is the MVP here, but there's this part where Picard mentions something and 7 of 9's like, we don't do that anymore. And Picard kind of tries to recover from it, and Riker's like, oh yeah, nice save, or whatever. And Picard just tells him to shut up. Shut up, Will. This is the kind of playful banter that works with established characters when good writing is put forth and understands who these characters are and the way they would talk to each other. And we introduced to Captain Shaw, who's played by Todd Stashwick. So he's been in Star Trek before, which is cool. But in this meeting with Picard, Riker, 7, and Captain Shaw, and Captain didn't show up for when Riker and Picard boarded, which is very unusual. Usually the captain's there, but we come to find out Captain Shaw doesn't really like Picard or Riker. He has all these not at all subtle digs. It's not like he outright says he doesn't like him. You just tell that he doesn't like him, because the little digs that he has here and there, he's just very short and off-putting towards them. And because apparently Shaw is a very by-the-book officer, or so he says, and he doesn't like the reputation that Picard and Riker have of being flying by the seat of their pants and that kind of thing, which is pretty funny if you think about it, because if you take the 5 captains from the Star Trek series, you take Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Janeway, and Archer. You take all of them, Picard is the most by-the-book captain out of those 5. So it's just funny the way other people read stories of the Enterprise crew and Picard and the stuff that happened and how they interpret that to be. He just throws the rule book out. I just think that's funny. Captain Shaw obviously does not buy or care about their little their reasoning for altering course. He's like, I've got my orders. I don't really care what you're doing or what you want to do. I'm going to go by my orders. And so he's not going to alter course. And there is one dig that he gives that I think goes a little bit too far. And it's the last dig that he gives, which is he talks about how Seven's allegiance is to the ship, not to old friends or to ex-Borg, referring to Picard and Locutus of Borg. And, that was a little bit too far. You had these little digs and you were kind of annoying, but yeah, that was a little bit too far. Then we cut back to Rafi again, and she's talking to her handler and with the Starfleet intelligence, and We get a list of why we don't like Rafi, which is kind of funny. But yeah, there's a little bit too much Rafi in this episode for me. Nothing in this episode makes me not like Rafi. Everything I don't like about Rafi is from everything previously, but it is a pretty big hurdle for this season to get over, to use Rafi and to utilize Rafi and make me care about Rafi, because I don't like Rafi. And then cutting back to the Titan, they put Riker and Picard in basically the lower decks. Like this, I was like, geez, remember when like everyone had like these big quarters? This is why the Galaxy class ships are so much better than the Constitution class, because everybody had their own quarters. I mean, obviously this was thrown in just to, Captain Shaw wanted to put them in a place and be like, oh yeah, this is the best we could do on short notice. Here you go. Here's your bunk beds. And Picard talks a little bit more as far as the fact that he hasn't seen Beverly in 20 years, but they obviously didn't leave on good terms. That's something you find out from this conversation as with Riker, outside the fact that Riker's like, man, I feel old. I'm too old for these beds. Picard and Riker do have a conversation with Seven and talk about the message from Beverly. Obviously, they're going to need her help anyway, but she confronts them and Picard says, hey, this is what's going on. And we find out that Seven's having some issues with the Starfleet structure. And honestly, it's probably just because she doesn't like Captain Shaw. She could request a change of command. That you could do that, especially as a first officer. Captains like to pick their first officer. So, but regardless, for the purposes of this plot, obviously, she's kind of stuck in this situation. And either way, it doesn't matter. Even without knowing what's happening with Picard and Beverly's message, all that, Seven had already disobeyed orders to go ahead and go along with whatever Picard and Riker were up to. So the Titan does end up at the nebula where Beverly's message came from, the coordinates that were given. And Shaw wakes up and is like, where are we? And he's obviously pissed. And, it says, Seven, your time with Starfleet is over with. And I want a full report on this, which is just kind of funny. It's like, hey, you're no longer with Starfleet, but I want a full report. Then we're back with Rafi again. Again, a little bit too much of Rafi for my taste. But as I said, there's really nothing in here that makes me not like her. I just previously don't like her. But she finds out who the Red Lady is, from the Red Lady from this whole conversation. And we find out it's a Rachel Garrett statue. Now, Rachel Garrett was the captain of the Enterprise C from the TNG episode Yesterday's Enterprise. And so I thought that was kind of a cool little, I guess you could call it fan service if you want, or a fan Easter egg, whatever it is. Either way, moving on. So Rafi tries to warn us. Apparently this is a recruitment drive, if I remember correctly, from the episode. And so she's trying to warn this Starfleet building, this outpost, whatever it is inside the city, that, hey, they're about to get hit with, they're about to be attacked, but the comms are being scrambled, obviously, because their message isn't getting through. And then we see the entire building is hit with probably what we can assume is this quantum warp beam that they talked about earlier that she had the tip on. And apparently what it does is it basically comes down and can teleport huge buildings up into the sky and just drop them, because that's basically what happened. Then we come back to Picard and Riker, and they're about to they're boarding Beverly's ship. And again, Riker is the MVP in this. Jonathan Frakes is MVP here, because he's Riker says, great, your hands are stiff, my knees are killing me, as long as we don't have to shoot or move, we should be fine.
That is a joke. I get it.
I just can't wait. I really hope we're going to see the Riker maneuver. I don't know if Jonathan Frakes can still pull off the Riker maneuver, but if Jonathan Frakes pulls off the Riker maneuver this season, and I'm like, it goes up a half a point in my book. So Picard and Riker are going through the ship, and they're kind of picking up on the clues to determine what happened here, and even comment how the ashes, how it doesn't look like any phaser fire that they know of. And like I said, it ties back to the beginning of the episode, right? Where it's like, hey, this is a weird rifle she's using, which normally would just be a thing that Star Trek fans or nitpicking fans. I'm a nitpicking fan, I guess, as you want to call it. I think most fans are nitpicking to a certain extent. I really don't like that terminology, but regardless, people who have noticed, hey, that phaser's kind of strange, or that rifle's kind of strange, and then they reference back to it, like it's some kind of bootleg phaser rifle. So I thought that was cool. It's like, hey, wow, this is actually something that doesn't talk down to the audience. It's like, hey, the audience we're going to throw this out there if the audience notices it, and we're going to reference back to it in the same episode. I liked it. I like the characters being smart too. I like seeing smart characters who are intelligent. We don't see much of that anymore. And Star Trek in particular has always been known for smarter characters who make more intelligent choices. Doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. Obviously they do. But it's nice to see characters being intelligent. And then Picard finds Beverly in a stasis pod, and someone has taken Riker hostage, and it turns out to be her son. It's Beverly's son. So we can gather that based on the fact that she cut off all contact with everybody 20 years ago, and this kid's probably, I don't know, 19, that this it has a high probability that this is probably Jean-Luc and Beverly's son.
You are the father.
And then we get Beverly's son, who I don't think he says his name. If he did, I didn't catch it. It happened pretty quick, but he says, hey, we're being hunted, and whoever it is followed Picard and Riker to their ship, and then we get this creepy looking ship that definitely has evokes some feelings of Star Trek 2009 Nero ship. I think this ship looks really cool. Really cool coming out of the nebula. That's where the episode ends. I did watch through the credits. I really like the music that's used in the credits. I love the visuals in the end credits. So let's go ahead and get to the recap. So what do I like? I like the performances here. I like the setup here. I like the superficially, I like the classic paneling. This is like something Star Trek fans would know, is like the LCARS paneling, which is synonymous with the TNG era. We haven't really seen that in Picard season 1 or season 2. Like when you see it, you're like, that's TNG era Star Trek. And so I like that was utilized more, because Picard season 1 and season 2 didn't look like Star Trek at all. They looked more like Mass Effect and Battlestar Galactica. And I love Mass Effect, at least the first 3 games, and Battlestar Galactica reboot. I love those, but that's not Star Trek. Star Trek is something different. So I do like the fact that superficially they're trying to implement a little bit more of it. On that same token, I really do wish that they would go with a little more lighting. I think everything's just too dark. Boost up the saturation too. I know a lot of people like kind of the dark visual style, and like as far as modern storytelling, I guess, or modern sci-fi. I just don't think it really works that well with Star Trek. I'm just not a fan of it, but I do love the score here. A lot of great tracks so far here in episode 1. And like I said, the end credits have some great Star Trek tracks. This is something that I would probably buy on vinyl. I'll wait till the whole season's over to see what other tracks we're going to see, but I do like the score so far in the first episode. I love the banter between Picard and Riker. It works really, really well. Like I said, Jonathan Frakes, MVP of this episode. He definitely feels like Riker. He doesn't feel like Jonathan Frakes. He feels like Riker, like he's playing a character, which is something that, even though I love Patrick Stewart most of the time doesn't feel like Picard. There are moments that he does. And I'm talking mainly about season 1 and season 2, which, didn't serve him any favors, but we'll see how it is in season 3. So definitely Riker, Jonathan Frakes, great thing. And honestly, this whole episode really does feel like it's a start of a really cool, interesting Star Trek adventure. Like we're being set off on something. As I said, it's a slow burn, and I like that so far. But I will say, even though I do think this first episode is a really good setup going forward, the first episode of Picard season 1 was the best episode of that season, right? And then it went downhill from that. The first episode of season 2 was the best episode from that season, and then it went downhill. So a good first episode doesn't necessarily mean anything, historically speaking. But either way, I'm still looking forward to this. I am impressed with the dialogue and the banter so far. But what do you guys think? Did you guys check out this episode? Hopefully you did, because I just spoiled the whole episode if you haven't. Or if you're one of the Star Trek fans who's kind of given up on New Trek, again, I totally get that position. I totally understand that position. For me, I'm not quite there yet. I'm just with the showrunner's really what sold me on having some hope in this season, right? And that and early reviews being sent out. The idea that like 6 episodes of the show is sent out to like YouTubers to check out who are all critical of New Trek. Like that's something that only happens when something's good. Like I said before, hopefully this is the type of situation where we get New Trek fans and Star Trek fans who don't like New Trek, and we kind of unite around this season. That would be nice. It'd be nice if we could all just get along.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm looking forward to checking out the next episode. That review, as I said, will be up on Friday. Thank you to everyone who checked out this video. Thank you to my subscribers. All of you are awesome. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm Geechu64, and I'll always tell you the truth.